Now it's time to bring in our next guest, of course, Michael Eastham. Michael is the founder of Fellowship Financial, a retirement income store just outside of Orlando. And he's also Amazon best-selling author of the book, Common Sense Income Strategies. Michael, thanks so much for being back with us here on The Income Generation.
It's my pleasure. Always good to be back with you guys.
So Mike, it's great to see you, but you have literally written the book on income and investing with common sense dividends, correct?
Yeah, I have.
All right, so I've got that book right here in my lobby. Folks pick it up all the time. Tell us about your background and what qualifies you to be an income specialist.
Well, yeah, thanks for asking, Jeff. I've been a CPA for over 30 years now, and I think that having that CPA designation, one of the things that I started out doing was, analyzing financial statements. And by doing that, we realized that companies have to be profitable in order to survive. Well, that's the same thing that people need to understand if they're going to survive in retirement. It's generating income, and so as a result of that, I went on to get my personal financial specialist designation, which is CPAs that specialize in financial planning. And I've been loving life doing that ever since. And so by educating people, radio program, my book, talking to guys like you, and then of course helping people to understand the importance of income, that has kind of developed my background along the many decades.
Not too many guys can say that, Michael, so that my hat's off to you. That's a wow factor right there. So tell me how that assists you with goal setting and determining what folks' goals should be when they retire. How do you utilize that, and what do you tell them?
Yeah, a lot of people think that the goal setting side is just this fluffy thing that's out there, and they don't spend a lot of time on it. I try to make folks realize that can be the number one important thing to take into consideration, because goals, they're dreams that you want to accomplish in retirement. But guess what? Goals in many cases have costs associated with them. And so if you don't factor those costs into your retirement planning, well, you're setting yourself up for failure. And so that's a key piece that unfortunately isn't talked about much.
Well, speaking of that, you get to have that epiphany meeting with folks where you're doing that top-down study on what income they're going to have prior to retiring and then what income they're going to have after retiring. Tell us how you transition folks like that.
Well, once they actually have the discovery that, yeah, you know what, if I want to travel in retirement, well, I got to have money to do that. If I want to go on missions trips, I have to have money to do that. If I want to help my grandchildren pay for their college education or put a down payment on their house, they have that epiphany. They don't really think about it. So as a normal part of our process, our planning process, we talk about goals. We talk about the cost of goals. And then we formulate that into their budget when we try to build up not only the need for income, but then also the source of their income.
Thanks again for being such a good friend of the Income Generation.
Always a pleasure, guys. Thanks for having me.
So now it's time to introduce our next guest, Eric Lardner. Eric is the founder of Abundant Wealth Management, a retirement income store in Dallas, Texas. Eric, thanks so much for being back with us here on The Income Generation.
Great to be with you, Dave. Thank you.
So Eric, it's great to see you. I want to know specifically how you work with your clients when you just start to assess what their retirement picture is going to look like. How do you assess that and bring them a good picture of reality? Explain your process verbally for us.
Well, I think looking at the big picture first and working backwards from there, finding out exactly what their income needs are, and then putting together a plan using, more specific, shorter term goals in order to achieve the macro objective is, where we typically start.
Okay, well, that's good. But why is investing for income a better place for them than investing for growth at that stage of their lives?
Well, most people have, when they think about retirement, they think about it in macro terms. What they don't realize is that in retirement, the most important thing is not net worth necessarily, but having a consistent, stable, steady stream of income that's reliable.
Okay. And fixed income basically does that. So what types of things do we invest in to do that, to provide that reliability, that predictability in income?
We have a number of bond and bond-like instruments that we invest in, specialty ETFs, BDCs, things of that nature. Some things people are familiar with, some things people may not be familiar with, but we have a diversified list of investments that we can place people in that are safer and more consistent and more reliable.
Well, that's what everybody wants, I think. That's what they want today, correct? Safety, reliability, predictability?
That's the name of the game in retirement for sure.
Because if we have too much risk, then we've got, huge macro problems there at some point down the line. Occasionally we see folks come into the office here, and you probably have the same thing in your hometown in Texas there, where somebody's pulling out money randomly from their portfolio with no interest earnings of any kind. Have you ever run into that?
Oh, most definitely. Most definitely. That's not uncommon, unfortunately. And when I encounter people that are in that circumstance, it's a code red scenario. You've got to get them out of that cycle so that they don't run out of money in their lifetime.
Eric, thanks so much for being back with us here. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Dave.
So Jeff, now it's time to bring in our final guest, and that is Nathan Cox, co-founder of Retirement Income Solutions, a retirement income store located in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, right outside of Nashville. Nathan, thanks so much for being back with us on the Income Generation.
Thank you, Dave. It's good to be here.
So Nathan, it's great to see you. But I want to go over a couple of things with you today, and I'd like to know what your feeling is on purpose-based investing versus performance-based investing for members of the Income Generation, and what's the difference?
Purpose versus performance. I got you. Well, my opinion is purpose-based investing is critical when you are nearing retirement age, or especially if you're already retired. Performance-based investing is fine if you're in that accumulation stage of your life, right? But when you start making that transition from performance to a need for income in your retirement, to me, it makes perfect sense to make the transition to purpose-based investing. Your money has a purpose at that point, right?
That's true. So it's not really about accumulation anymore as much as it is about income. Income seems to take precedence over that. So on that note, though, Nathan, what do you see as the biggest mistakes people make in retirement when they don't follow a purpose versus performance-based strategy?
Well, they just don't make that transition. They keep on the same track of performance-based investing, and they rely on performance to try to generate income. I saw that back in the 1990s. In fact, I was taught and firmly believed during that time that, in a fairly new concept, that relying on growth and capital appreciation was perfectly acceptable to generate income. And what we found in the early 2000s is that just wasn't the case. It just didn't work out so well.
Thanks again for being back with us here on the show. Really appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.